When an 8-year-old boy's sharp mind challenges the law, the courtroom and the whole world will never be the same. 8-year-old Malik Johnson lived in a neighborhood where gunshots were more common than lullabies. Abandoned houses lined the cracked sidewalks. The sound of sirens echoed through the night like a sad song that never ended. In the middle of all this chaos, Malik's world was small, a tiny apartment with his mother, a cracked television that barely worked, and a stack of secondhand books that sat quietly in the corner. Like hidden treasure, Malik was not like the other boys. In his area, while most of them played basketball on broken courts or ran wild in the streets, Malik stayed inside. It wasn't because he was scared. It was because his mind was always busy, always asking questions, always searching for answers. He wasn't interested in cartoons or video games. Instead, he had developed a strange fascination for something no one around him ever talked about: the law. It all started one rainy afternoon when Malik was only 6. The electricity had gone out again, and his mother was at work. He was sitting alone near the window when a knock came at the door. It was Mr. Reynolds, the old man from down the hall. Mr. Reynolds used to be a paralegal before he retired. He knew Malik's mother was struggling, and sometimes he brought food or candles during power outages. That day, he handed Malik a small box filled with heavy books and said, "You seem like the type who likes to read. Try these." The books were thick, full of words Malik didn't understand, but something about them pulled him in. He flipped through the pages and saw words like justice, trial, and evidence. They sounded important. They sounded powerful. He didn't understand much at first, but slowly, as he kept reading and asking Mr. Reynolds questions, the world of law started to make sense. He learned that the law was about rules, fairness, and truth. It was about standing up when something was wrong. Malik found that exciting. In a neighborhood where things were often unfair, the idea of fairness felt like magic. He began spending every afternoon with those books. He memorized courtroom phrases and imagined himself standing in front of a judge, making arguments and defending people who had no one else. At school, no one really noticed Malik's growing interest. His teachers were tired, underpaid, and overwhelmed. The classrooms were crowded, and many of the students came from broken homes like Malik's. The school system didn't have time for special attention. Malik was quiet and did his homework on time, so he was often ignored, but that didn't bother him much. He wasn't looking for praise. He was chasing something bigger: understanding. Every evening after his mother returned from her job, at the diner, Malik would wait for her to fall asleep before pulling out his notebooks. He would copy down court cases, legal arguments, and definitions he didn't understand yet but wanted to learn. Mr. Reynolds lent him more books and sometimes even printed out old trial transcripts for him to study. Malik's tiny bedroom started to look like a mini law library, filled with pages of scribbles, underlined words, and sticky notes. His mother, Janelle, worked hard, but barely made enough to cover the bills. She loved Malik deeply, but she was exhausted. She didn't always understand her son's strange obsession. Sometimes she would say, "Malik, baby, why don't you go outside and play like the other kids?" But he would smile gently and say, "I'm studying, Mama. One day I'll help people." She would shake her head and kiss his forehead, too tired to argue. Malik didn't have many friends. Some kids teased him for always carrying a notebook. They called him the professor or court boy. But Malik didn't care. He knew what he wanted. He wanted to be the kind of person who understood how the world worked, how laws could protect people and sometimes hurt them. He saw his neighbors get arrested for things they didn't do. He saw police come into houses without knocking. He heard stories of young men getting long prison sentences for small mistakes. It made him angry. But instead of shouting, Malik studied. He wanted to change things, even if he didn't yet know how. One evening, something happened that made everything personal. Malik and his mother were watching the news when they saw the name Tyrone Johnson, Malik's father. He had been arrested and was accused of robbing a store. Malik hadn't seen his father in over a year, but he remembered him. Tyrone wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a criminal either. The news said he was caught on camera, but the footage was blurry, and the details didn't add up. Malik's mother covered her mouth in shock. "No, that can't be," she whispered. Malik didn't cry, didn't scream. He grabbed a pen and started taking notes from the news broadcast. Then he asked his mother for every detail she had about the case. She was confused and scared, but she gave him the court date, the name of the lawyer, and whatever paperwork she had. Malik stayed up the entire night reading it. Something didn't feel right. The police report had strange errors. The timing didn't match what Malik knew about his father's schedule, and the witness statements were full of contradictions. The next morning, Malik walked to Mr. Reynolds' apartment and knocked urgently. "I need to learn how to read case files properly," he said. Mr. Reynolds, surprised by Malik's seriousness, sat him down and began explaining. For the next few weeks, Malik read everything: police reports, witness statements, and legal rules about evidence. He filled entire notebooks with questions and thoughts. At the first court hearing, Malik begged his mother to take him along. She was hesitant, but he insisted. When they arrived, the courtroom was cold and quiet. Malik sat in the back, dressed in his best clothes, a shirt too big for him and polished shoes. He watched everything: the way the judge spoke, the way the lawyers moved, the way the jury looked bored. He saw how quickly his father's lawyer spoke, how little effort he seemed to put in. It made Malik furious. He knew, just knew, that something was being missed. When they got home, Malik told his mother, "I'm going to help Daddy." She laughed at first, thinking it was sweet. But when she saw the charts he made, the timelines, the evidence, comparisons, she stopped laughing. "Malik, this is serious. You're just a kid," she said softly. Malik looked up at her and replied, "But I can see what others don't. Please let me try." One night, Malik stayed up late and wrote a letter. It's not to a friend or a teacher, but to the judge. In the letter, he respectfully pointed out the inconsistencies he had found in the case. He wrote about the rules of evidence, the contradictions in the testimony, and the fact that his father had an alibi no one had checked. He signed the letter with his full name and added, "I'm only 8, but I understand the truth." Attached to the letter was a page of legal notes he had written in his small, careful handwriting. He didn't expect much, but he hoped that if someone important saw it, they might pause even for a moment and take a second look. The next morning, before school, he gave the letter to his mother and begged her to mail it. She hesitated, afraid it might get them into trouble. But something in Malik's eyes made her trust him. She sent it. Days passed. Nothing happened. Malik kept going to school, kept studying, and kept hoping, till one afternoon, a black car pulled up outside their apartment. A man in a suit knocked on their door. He was from the court. "We'd like to speak with Malik Johnson," he said. That was the moment everything started to change. The sun had barely risen when Malik woke up with a strange feeling in his stomach. It was the kind of feeling that told him something big was coming. He got dressed quickly, quietly tiptoeing around the small apartment so he wouldn't wake his mother. He packed his usual books, his notebook full of notes about his father's case, and tucked the pen his father once gave him deep into his pocket like a lucky charm. His eyes still felt tired from staying up late, going over the case file again and again. But his mind was fully awake. That morning, everything felt different. His teacher called on him in class, and for the first time, he didn't even notice. His thoughts were far away in the courtroom with his father. During lunch, his friend Jamal asked him why he always looked so serious these days. Malik didn't answer. He couldn't explain it. How do you tell someone that your father's freedom might depend on something you discovered in a pile of confusing paperwork? Later that day, when school was over and he was walking home, Malik saw the same black car parked outside his building. It had tinted windows and a government plate. His heart started beating faster. As he got closer, a tall man in a dark suit stepped out. He looked serious, but not mean. "Are you Malik Johnson?" the man asked. Malik nodded slowly. His mother, standing at the doorway, looked worried. The man introduced himself as someone from the judge's office. He said the judge had read Malik's letter, the one he wrote late at night, full of questions and observations. The judge didn't believe a child had written it. He thought maybe a law student or a paralegal had sent it as a prank. But the man explained that the judge wanted to meet whoever wrote it, and since Malik had signed his name clearly, they decided to come see for themselves. Janelle, Malik's mother, didn't know what to say. She stood there with her mouth slightly open, trying to process everything. "You want to talk to my son?" she asked. "He's 8. The man gave her a kind smile and said, "Yes, ma'am, we're aware. But the judge wants to ask him a few questions. There's no trouble. We're just curious." Malik sat at the kitchen table while the man from the court took out a notepad. He started asking simple questions about the letter where Malik had learned the terms he used, how he had spotted certain inconsistencies, and why he thought the timeline didn't make sense. Malik answered every question calmly. He explained how he had studied legal books for over a year, how Mr. Reynolds had helped him, and how he had read every detail of his father's arrest file. The man was quiet for a long moment after Malik finished. Then he stood up, nodded respectfully, and said, "I think the judge will want to meet you in person." Malik's mother was still confused, but deep down, she was starting to understand. Her son wasn't just a smart kid. He was something rare, something special. She had spent years worrying about how she would protect him from the world. But now it looked like Malik was the one trying to protect his family. A few days later, Malik was allowed into the courthouse again. This time not as a quiet observer in the back row, but as a guest. The judge, a tall woman with kind but sharp eyes, asked to speak with him privately. Malik sat nervously in the large chair across from her. Her office was filled with books and important-looking papers. She leaned forward and said, "So, Malik, you wrote this?" She held up the letter. Malik nodded. "All of it?" she asked. Again, he nodded. "And these notes?" She showed him the extra page filled with legal terms and arrows pointing to different problems in the police report. "Yes, Your Honor," Malik said softly. He had practiced that phrase. He wanted to sound respectful. The judge smiled. "You? No more than some of the interns I've had in this building," she said. Malik blushed but said nothing. She asked him questions, real questions about the law, about due process, about why certain things didn't add up in the report. Malik answered like he was having a regular conversation. His words were clear. He didn't try to show off. He was just trying to explain what he saw. After 30 minutes, the judge sat back and looked at him in a way no adult had ever looked at him before, like he wasn't just a child, but someone worth listening. "2. I'm going to reopen this case," she said. "Your observations deserve a closer look, but this will stay between us for now. I don't want the media turning this into a circus. Can I trust you to keep it quiet?" Malik nodded again, his heart thumping loudly. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. When he got home and told his mother, she hugged him tighter than ever before. "Baby, I don't know what's happening right now, but I'm so proud of you," she whispered as news spread quietly through the court system that the judge had found new reasoning to reopen the case. Things began to shift. The public defender assigned to Tyrone's case suddenly seemed more alert. He started asking more questions, making more phone calls. Malik watched him closely from the back row during hearings. He noticed the lawyer using some of the very points Malik had raised. Malik continued studying. Every night he read new cases, learned about wrongful arrests, and watched old courtroom videos online. He made charts in his notebook, one for timelines, one for evidence, one for witnesses. He even created a list of questions he believed should have been asked but weren't. One evening, Mr. Reynolds came over for dinner. Malik showed him the updated notes. The old man stared at the papers with wide eyes. "You're doing work some lawyers don't do until they've been practicing for years," he said. "But remember, you're still a kid, okay? Don't carry the whole world on your shoulders." Malik nodded, but deep down he knew he had to carry it, 'cause nobody else was. Weeks passed. The new evidence forced the judge to delay the trial. The store's surveillance video was reviewed again, this time by an independent team. They realized the timestamp had been edited. The witness who claimed Tyrone was at the scene had changed his story more than once. And most importantly, there was now proof that Tyrone was somewhere else at the exact time of the robbery. A security camera from a train station showed him buying a ticket 30 minutes away. Malik felt like shouting for joy, but he stayed calm. He knew there was still more work to do at school. Some teachers had started hearing whispers about Malik's involvement in the case. One kind-hearted teacher, Ms. Daniels, pulled him aside and asked if he needed any help or extra time for assignments. Malik shook his head. "I'm okay," he said, "but thank you." For the first time in his school life, he felt seen. His classmates noticed the change too. Same kids who once teased him now asked questions. "Is it true you found a mistake in a court case?" one boy asked. "Did a judge really read your letter?" Malik answered quietly. He didn't want to brag, but inside, he was proud. The day of the next hearing finally arrived. The courtroom was packed. Reporters had caught wind of something unusual, but didn't know the full story yet. Malik sat behind his father, next to his mother, his hands gripping. His notebook tightly dotted as the prosecution tried to hold their ground. The defense began to push harder, using the new timeline, the altered video, and the unreliability of the witnesses. The judge asked tough questions she hadn't asked before. It was clear she wasn't going to let the case move forward without proper review. The moment came when the prosecutor mentioned the mysterious letter again, saying it was anonymous legal interference. The judge interrupted. "It wasn't anonymous," she said, looking directly at Malik. Everyone turned toward him. His heart skipped a beat. She continued. "It was written by a young man who noticed what we all missed. And because of him, this courtroom is now closer to the truth." Gasps filled the room. Reporters scrambled to write down what they'd just heard. Malik sat frozen, unsure of what to do. His mother placed her hand over his and squeezed gently. That day, court officially ruled that Tyrone Johnson's trial would be delayed further for a full investigation. He would not be sent to prison, not yet. And maybe, just maybe, not ever. As they left the courthouse, cameras flashed. People asked questions. Malik didn't answer. He walked quietly, holding his mother's hand, the weight of what had. It just happened, settling over him like a blanket. That night, when they got home, Malik finally allowed himself to cry, not out of sadness, but relief. For the first time, his father had a chance, and he had helped make that happen. But deep down, he knew the fight wasn't over. The real trial was coming, and Malik was ready. The courtroom was quiet, too quiet. Every person sitting on the long wooden benches seemed to be holding their breath. The judge, the jury, the lawyers, and even the guards stood still like statues. At the center of this silence was a young boy, only 8 years old, standing near the defense table with a notebook clutched in his small hands. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Children didn't speak in court. Children didn't study legal documents or write letters to judges. But Malik Johnson was not like other children, and the truth he had uncovered had brought everyone to this moment. It all began when the judge had asked for a private meeting. She had already read Malik's letter and seen the careful notes he'd written about the case. But she wasn't convinced that a child could understand the law so deeply. That's why she arranged a closed-door session with the legal teams, court officials, and Malik himself. No media, no crowd. Just a test, to see if Malik's mind was truly behind the words. When Malik entered the room, he felt his legs shaking. His mother held his shoulders gently and whispered, "Be strong, baby. Just tell the truth." She wasn't sure what would happen either, but she believed in her son more than she ever had before. The judge asked Malik to explain why he believed his father's arrest was wrong. Malik took a deep breath, opened his notebook, and began speaking. He didn't use big words to sound smart, just explained what he saw, the missing camera footage, the time on the train ticket, the mistakes in the witness statements, and how no one had looked at the security footage from the station. He used simple, clear sentences, but every sentence had power. The room remained silent as he spoke. Even the lawyers, who were used to big speeches and long arguments, didn't interrupt. They were too shocked by what they were hearing. When he finished, the judge leaned back in her chair. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wide with disbelief. She asked a few more questions about how Malik learned these things, about the legal terms he used, and how he even knew how to write a legal brief. Malik gave all the credit to the books, to Mr. Reynolds, and to the quiet hours he spent reading while others played. After that session, everything changed. The judge ordered the hearing to be reopened to the public, this time with a very special moment planned. She wanted Malik to present his findings, not as a lawyer, not as a witness, but as a voice for truth. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was full. People who had never paid attention to small cases like Tyrone Johnson's were suddenly sitting in the front rows. Reporters, bloggers, law students, and even civil rights leaders had come to see the kid who saw what no one else did. Malik wore the best clothes he had. His mother had ironed his shirt the night before and polished his shoes until they shone. He didn't have a tie, but Mr. Reynolds gave him one from his own closet. "You've earned this," the old man said. With a proud smile, when Malik stepped up to speak, the courtroom fell silent. The judge gave him permission to present, reminding everyone that this was highly unusual but important. Malik stood straight, took a deep breath, and opened his notebook. He began with the timeline. Slowly and clearly, he showed how his father couldn't have been at the store during the time of the robbery. He pointed out the timestamp on the train station footage, which proved his father was somewhere else entirely. Then he moved to the police report showing how the details in the statements didn't match the surveillance footage. He explained how one of the witnesses had changed their story 3 times. People in the courtroom started whispering to each other. Some jurors leaned forward, stunned that an 8-year-old had pieced this together better than the defense team. Malik even pointed to a law, something called reasonable doubt, and said, "If there is doubt, we should not send someone to prison just to close a case." The judge tried to stay calm, but everyone could see she was impressed. Even the prosecutor, a sharp man with years of experience, looked down at his notes, unsure how to respond. He had prepared arguments against the defense attorney, not against a little boy. When Malik finished, he closed his notebook and looked at the jury. "I'm not a lawyer," he said softly, "but I know my dad is innocent. I just want you to look again, please." The courtroom erupted in a low wave of murmurs. Some people shook their heads in disbelief. Others nodded slowly, deeply moved. After a short break, the jury was asked to stay for a special session to review all of Malik's findings along with the new evidence. The judge called it an extraordinary request in an extraordinary situation. While the jury stayed behind, Malik sat with his mother outside the courtroom. She held his hand tightly and kissed his forehead. "No matter what happens," she said, "you did something incredible. I've never been so proud." I sighed. The jury reviewed the video footage, the train ticket, the witness statements, and all of Malik's notes. One juror, a woman in her 50s, whispered to the others, "How did none of us catch this before?" Hours later, the jury returned. It wasn't the official trial verdict that was still to come, but they gave a statement that they believed. New evidence had introduced serious doubt into the case. The judge smiled at Malik when she heard it. The court officially ruled that the original charges against Tyrone Johnson would be reevaluated. The case, once treated like just another file in a crowded system, was now a priority. A full investigation into the arrest was ordered. That night, Malik became the center of attention. News outlets ran headlines like 8-year-old legal mind shocks courtroom and boy genius defends his father. Reporters stood outside their apartment building, asking for interviews. The cameras flashed when Malik stepped outside to get the mail. He didn't know how to handle all the attention. He only cared about one thing, that his father might not go to prison for something he didn't do. Some people were amazed. Others were skeptical. A few even criticized the court for letting a child get involved. But most saw something beautiful. A boy who loved truth more than anything and had the courage to speak when no one else would. Malik's school called a special assembly to recognize him. His classmates, who once teased him for being the professor, now clapped for him as if he were a hero. One boy even gave him a homemade certificate that read, "Best Lawyer Ever." Malik smiled shyly and thanked everyone, though he still didn't feel like a hero. Back at home, his father was allowed a temporary release while the investigation continued. When Malik saw him walk through the door, his heart nearly exploded with joy. He ran to him, hugging him tightly. Tyrone held him close and whispered, "I knew you were smart, son, but I didn't know you were a miracle." The family had dinner. Together that night, a real dinner, with laughter, warm food, and hope. They hadn't had that in a long time. Malik sat beside his father and explained everything that had happened. Tyrone listened with tears in his eyes. You saved me. Malik, he said, you saved our family. But Malik didn't feel finished. He knew the case wasn't over. The real trial was coming. The police would have to explain why they arrested the wrong man. Store owner would have to answer questions about the blurry video. And the real suspect still hadn't been caught. Malik continued to study. His notebooks grew thicker. Lawyers from other cities began sending him books and notes of encouragement. A famous university professor even called to speak with him and invited him to visit the campus one day. Despite the praise, Malik stayed humble. When reporters asked how he felt being called the little lawyer, he always said, I'm just a kid who loves books. I love my dad. Even the judge took a special interest in him. She invited him to attend a future trial as a guest. Observer. She said she saw something rare in Malik, not just intelligence, but the heart of someone who truly understood justice. Through all this, Malik never forgot where he came from. His neighborhood was still tough. A siren still screamed at night, but now more people began to believe in change. Kids started coming to Malik's apartment after school, asking questions about books. He began helping them read and understand the world better. He didn't just want to save his father. He wanted to help others too. In just a few weeks, the life of an 8-year-old boy had shaken the walls of the justice system. He had shown that courage doesn't need a law degree, that truth can come from the smallest voices, that love for family, when combined with knowledge, can move mountains. And though Malik had no idea what the future would bring, he knew one thing for sure. He would never stop learning. And he would never stop fighting for what was right. Malik woke up early every day now, not because he had to, but because something inside him just wouldn't let him rest. His father was finally home after being locked up for weeks, but Malik knew their fight wasn't over. The courtroom hadn't closed the case. They'd only pressed pause while the truth slowly climbed its way out of the shadows. The trial would continue, and this time, the world was watching. Even with the new attention, life at home was still hard. Malik's mother, Janelle, worked longer hours because some of the court costs weren't covered. Tyrone was not allowed to return to work yet, and although he was free for now, he was still under investigation. He wore an ankle monitor that beeped if he went too far from the house. The neighbors didn't know the full story, and some still looked at him like a criminal. Malik saw the hurt in his father's eyes when people whispered behind his back. But Malik stayed strong. Every day after school, he worked on the case like it was his full-time job. He created new evidence maps, timelines, and witness diagrams. He made flashcards with questions he wanted the lawyer to ask in court. His room looked like a detective's office, books everywhere, sticky notes on the walls, printouts spread across the floor. Sometimes his mom would peek into his room and shake her head, smiling sadly. "You're just a kid, Malik," she'd say, "but you've got the heart of a grown man." Malik would nod but say nothing. He didn't feel like a kid anymore. One evening, Tyrone sat beside Malik on the floor and watched as his son sorted. "Papers, why are you doing all this?" he asked softly. "You already saved me once." Malik looked at his father and replied, "Because they still think you're guilty. I need to prove them wrong. Not just to the court, but to everyone." Tyrone wiped a tear from his eye and pulled Malik into a hug. "You're stronger than me, son. I don't deserve you." Malik hugged him back and whispered, "We're a team, Dad." Soon, something unexpected happened. The defense lawyer, the one who had barely done anything at the start of the trial, started calling regularly. He wanted to see Malik's notes, talk about theories, and even asked Malik for help understanding some of the case documents. At first, Malik was surprised. Then he realized something. His work was finally being taken seriously. The lawyer had stopped treating Tyrone's case like just another file. Now, it was a mission. Together, they went over the police report again. Malik pointed out a line that had bothered him for weeks. The officer who arrested Tyrone claimed he saw him running away from the store, wearing a red hoodie. But Malik knew and had proof that his father had been wearing a gray jacket that day. The store camera didn't show a clear face, but the color of the clothes was clear. Malik circled the sentence in red ink and wrote in bold letters, "Lie or mistake." That note changed everything. The defense team hired a private investigator to dig deeper. After a few days, the investigator found something shocking. Another man had been arrested 2 months earlier in a nearby city for a robbery. He looked just like Tyrone and also wore a red hoodie during his crime. This man had a long record of thefts and was known to use disguises. His name was Deshaun Baker. Malik's heart raced when he saw the photo. It wasn't his father. The shape of the face, the height, even the way the man walked, it was clearly someone else. But to a tired officer in a poor neighborhood, maybe. That didn't matter. The defense team quickly brought this evidence to the court. The judge ordered the prosecution to respond. Suddenly, everything was moving fast. The prosecutor, once calm and confident, now looked nervous in court, he said. They needed more time to review the new suspect. Meanwhile, Malik's story began spreading across the country. News channels featured him in interviews, and people sent letters from all over, some encouraging him to become a lawyer. Others simply saying thank you for giving them hope. Even kids from other schools wrote to him saying, "I want to be like you one day." But Malik didn't let the attention distract him. He stayed focused on one thing: the truth. He kept visiting the courthouse, sitting quietly in the back, observing every move, every word. He listened to how lawyers argued, how evidence was presented, and how the judge responded. He was learning faster than ever. Then came the biggest surprise of all. The judge herself invited Malik into her chambers again. This time she didn't ask about the case. She asked about him. "Malik," she said, "have you ever thought about becoming a lawyer one day?" Malik looked at her, unsure of what to say. "I want to help people," he answered, "and I want to stop unfair things from happening. So, maybe." The judge smiled warmly. "You've already done more than most people do in a lifetime. If you want to keep learning, I can help." From that day on, the judge began mentoring Malik quietly. She gave him books, talked to him about famous court cases, explained how the justice system worked, the good and the bad. Malik absorbed every word like a sponge. But while all this was happening, something unexpected began to worry Malik. His father had started changing. At first, Tyrone was full of gratitude and love. But slowly Malik noticed the fear in his eyes. Tyrone was having trouble sleeping. He had nightmares. He would sit silently for hours, staring at the wall. One night Malik overheard him say too, "Janelle, what if they still take me away?" Malik didn't know what to do. He'd fought so hard to bring his father home. But now it seemed like the fear was still holding him prisoner. That's when Malik realized something important. Justice wasn't just about courtrooms and laws. It was also about healing, about making people feel safe again. So Malik started spending more time with his dad, not talking about the case, not studying, just being a son. They played board games, went on walks, and even cooked meals. Together, slowly Malik saw his father's smile return. Finally, the trial resumed. This time, the courtroom was packed. Everyone knew this was the day new evidence would be presented. The jury sat alert, the judge ready, the world waiting. The defense lawyer stood up and called the private investigator to the stand. He explained everything: the similar suspect, the red hoodie, the criminal history. Then he showed the photo of Deshaun Baker and compared it with the store's security footage. The resemblance was striking. Next, they played the train station footage, showing Tyrone buying a ticket at the exact time of the robbery. Malik had watched that video 100 times, but seeing it in court made his heart beat louder. Then came the witness. One of the original witnesses had agreed to testify again, but this time they admitted that the police pressured them to point to Tyrone. "They told me they just needed someone," the man said. "They said he fit the description, and it would all be over fast." Gasps filled the courtroom. The prosecutor tried to fight back, saying the witness was unreliable and that new evidence wasn't enough, but the judge was firm. "We are not here to close cases. We are here to find the truth." When the defense rested, the room was silent again. The jury left to deliberate, and Malik sat holding his mother's hand. Hours passed. Every minute felt like a year. Malik looked at the ceiling, whispered silent prayers, and hoped he hadn't missed anything. Maybe he had forgotten a detail. Maybe there was something more he could have done. At his father, and remembered why he had started this journey because he loved him. Finally, the jury returned. The foreman stood and read the verdict. Not guilty. Tyrone closed his eyes. Janelle sobbed into her hands. Malik froze for a second, then jumped into his father's arms. Cameras flashed. People cried. The judge smiled. Justice had won, not because of fancy lawyers, not because of powerful people, but because of an 8-year-old boy with a sharp mind and a brave heart. As the courtroom emptied, people came up to Malik, shaking his hand, thanking him, calling him a hero. But Malik didn't feel like a hero. He just felt relieved. Father was finally free, for real this time. That night, back at home, they had a celebration. Nothing fancy, just food, laughter, and music. Tyrone danced with Malik in the living room. Janelle laughed for the first time in months. Mr. Reynolds came over and raised a glass of juice. To Malik, he said, the boy who taught us, all what justice really means. Malik smiled. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Because now that he had seen how broken the system could be, he was more determined than ever to fix it, and he would. One case at a time. After the court announced the final verdict, and Tyrone Johnson was declared not guilty, the Johnson family felt an enormous weight lift from their shoulders. The feeling was almost unbelievable. For months they had lived with fear and uncertainty, not knowing if Tyrone would be taken away again. But now, the truth had come out, and justice had been served. Malik, the young boy who had captured the hearts of so many, finally saw his father truly free. Free not only from the accusations, but from the heavy burden of unfair judgment. But even though the courtroom was silent now, the flashing cameras had faded away, Malik's journey was far from over. Deep inside him, a new fire was burning, a desire to make sure that what happened to his family wouldn't happen to others. He realized that many people in neighborhoods like his were still wrongly accused, still ignored, and still suffering. Because of mistakes made by the justice system, Malik understood that the system was broken in many ways. It often overlooked evidence, rushed to judgment, or ignored the voices of those who didn't have money or power. And because of this, innocent people could spend years in prison, or worse, lose their lives before the truth could come out. He didn't want anyone else to go through what his father and family had faced, so Malik decided that he would use his knowledge and courage to fight for others too. But how? He was only a child after all. What could one small boy do against a giant system? The answer came slowly, with the support of those around him. First, Malik returned to school with a new sense of purpose. His teachers noticed the change immediately. Malik no longer just read books for fun. He read legal cases, books about civil rights, and stories of famous activists. He asked questions about laws and how they affected ordinary people. His classmates respected him, not just because of the attention he had received, but because Malik always tried to help anyone who needed it. If a friend was being treated unfairly, Malik was the first to stand up for them. His mother, Janelle, saw the change too. She worked hard to keep their family together, and now she also began volunteering at community centers, speaking to groups about injustice and how Malik had shown them all that even a child's voice mattered. Tyrone, who was rebuilding his life and finding work again, became more involved in neighborhood efforts to support families who had been wrongly accused. Together, the Johnson family became a symbol of hope and strength in their community. Meanwhile, Malik's mentor, the judge who had first given him the chance to speak in court, introduced him to more people in the legal world. Lawyers, judges, and civil rights leaders began inviting Malik to speak at events. He learned about organizations that worked to defend people who couldn't afford lawyers and who fought against wrongful convictions. Malik even started writing a blog where he shared his experiences and explained how the justice system should work fairly and openly. Although he was young, Malik's words inspired many adults. They saw his honesty, his courage, and his deep understanding of right and wrong. He became a voice for the voiceless, someone who reminded them that justice was about fairness, kindness, and the truth. But Malik never forgot his roots. Even as he met important people and spoke on big stages, he still spent time with the kids in his neighborhood. He started a small club where children could learn about law, rights, and how to speak up. He wanted to give them the tools he had found: books, knowledge, and courage, so they wouldn't be afraid to fight for themselves. At home, life began to feel more normal. Tyrone found a steady job, and the family could breathe again. But the scars from the past stayed. Sometimes Malik's father would pause and remember the pain of being accused. Sometimes Malik would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about all the people still trapped by unfair courts, but they faced it together one day. Malik got a call from a big city far away. A university was inviting him to visit and learn more about law and justice. They wanted to support his dream and help him grow. Malik was nervous but excited. He knew this was a chance to learn more, to meet others who cared about justice, and to prepare for the work ahead. Before he left, Malik's mother hugged him tightly and said, "You're going to change the world, Malik. Never forget where you come from." Malik smiled and promised he wouldn't. At the university, Malik met professors who challenged him to think deeply, asked him to share his ideas, and gave him books and resources. He learned about history, about laws in other countries, and about the power of peaceful protest. He realized that justice wasn't just a courtroom matter, it was connected to everything in society. While studying, Malik continued to speak out. He joined youth organizations, helped prepare young people for leadership, and wrote articles calling for reform in the justice system. Slowly, his influence grew. People began to see Malik not just as a boy who saved his father, but as a future leader in justice. Back in his neighborhood, the seeds Malik had planted began to grow. More children joined his club. Parents and teachers started talking about fairness and rights. Community meetings were held to address police treatment and how to protect innocent people. Malik's story became a symbol of hope, reminding everyone that even the smallest voices could bring big change. Malik also faced challenges. Sometimes adults didn't listen. Sometimes the system pushed back. There were moments when Malik felt tired, frustrated, or scared. But every time he thought about his father's smile, about the family dinner, when they had laughed together after so long, Malik found strength to keep going. Years passed. Malik grew taller, wiser, and more determined. He graduated from school with honors and decided to study law formally. He wanted to be a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but one who defended the poor, the innocent, and the forgotten. When Malik finally became a lawyer, he returned to his community as a hero. But more importantly, he returned as a protector, ready to fight for justice for all. One of Malik's first cases as a lawyer was to help another family whose father had been wrongly arrested. Malik used everything he had learned from his early days in the courtroom to the lessons from his mentors to build a strong defense. Family's joy when the charges were dropped reminded Malik of his own victory years before. Over time, Malik started an organization dedicated to helping wrongly accused people. He worked with police departments to teach officers how to avoid mistakes. He spoke at schools to inspire young people to stand up for justice. He traveled to places where injustice was widespread, offering help and hope. But Malik always stayed humble. He never forgot that he was once the little boy sitting quietly in the courtroom just wanting to save his father. He kept a notebook, a habit from those early days, where he wrote stories of the people he helped and the lessons he learned. Whenever he felt overwhelmed, he'd read those notes and remember why he started. In speeches, Malik often said, "Justice is not just about laws. It is about people, their lives, their dignity, and their hope." When we listen to the smallest voices, we hear the loudest truths. And so, Malik's story became more than just a courtroom drama. It became a movement. A movement that showed the world how courage, knowledge, and love could change lives. How one boy's belief in truth could light the way for many others. Malik knew the journey would never truly end. There would always be cases to fight, injustices to correct, and voices to hear. But he was ready to keep learning, too. keep fighting, and to keep dreaming. Because Malik Johnson was more than just a boy who stunned a courtroom. He was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the light of justice can shine brightly if we believe in it enough to fight for it. And that light, sparked by a brave 8-year-old, would continue to shine for generations to come.